You can't give what you don't have. When you are talking about integrity, you are really talking about the real person, who that person is.
When you talk of integrity, you talk of honesty. To be honest. And to be honest means to be trustworthy, to be truthful. And politics is science and art of government.
Politics is about the people.
Yes.
And if you talk about it in a deeper sense, it has to do with how people take decision on how to lead themselves.
The All Progressives Congress government, led by President Muhammadu Buhari, has spent 2 years in office already. It will be halfway through the first 4-year mandate of the president, and as expected, it is time for stock-taking and sober reflection by Nigerians who voted him into power. On today's episode, we shall be discussing 2 years of Buhari's administration, the journey so far. Many thanks for joining us on Christians in Politics, coming to you from the broadcast studios of the Anglican Cable Network Nigeria, ACNN. I am Chukwuemekalum Anigwa. To discuss this topic today, I have in the studio two gentlemen. From my left, Mr. Chima Achu, who is a public affairs analyst and the CEO of Belani Global Resource Limited, located here in Abuja. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Also, I have Mr. Peter Akbaranta, who is the editor of a New Christian Herald magazine, resident here in Abuja. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Great to be here.
All right, let's begin with this. I'll come to you first, Mr. Chima. How would you rate Buhari's administration within the first 2 years?
Well, if you want to look at it from the context of time, 2 years is still a small time on one part to really assess an administration, or 4 years. But if you want to look at it from the perspective that Nigerians are already tired, you know, with so many issues, so many social, you know, political and socio-cultural and socio-economic issues bedeviling the country as a nation, then we will definitely see 2 years as a reasonable period to assess any government. Now, why I say that is just because, you know, when you view Nigeria from the context of, you know, the level of underdevelopment, which is a teaching challenge, you know, we still have a very long way to go. Have we had a reasonable number of years after post-independence? Yes. Have we achieved much? No. Then the question is, why are we still where we are after all these years? So it's still a whole lot of work that needs to be done.
So for you, you feel the administration hasn't done so well within this field?
Well, if you want me to grade the administration, well, I would say reasonably, maybe I'll use fair. I would say they've really done so well, with every sense of honesty, you know, because I always say that, you know, the kind of administration or the kind of leadership any country gets is a reflection of that society. We are where we are today because the kind of leaders we elect is a reflection of who we are. So looking at it from the aspect of rating there, in some critical sectors, well, I would say maybe a little inroad has been made in terms of, you know, the ongoing fight in the northeast, you know, against Boko Haram. You know, at least there is a decisive steps taken so far by the current administration to address some of those the challenges that made the war to relapse at a point under the previous administration. So as it stands right now, we can say yes, to a reasonable extent, you can give them a considerable maybe rating in terms of security, you know. So that's my opinion.
All right, Mr. Baranta, let me come to you. How do you think this Buhari-led administration has fared since May 29, 2015?
It may come from two perspectives. One, from what the government told us they would do. That is the agenda. They came with a three-pronged agenda to fight corruption, to fight the insecurity in the land, and what was the third one? Now, the fact of the matter is that people will be looking at the overall issues at stake when they came, when they promised change. Corruption, yes. Security, yes. But there are still issues of hunger, the cost of living, you know, where we were before and where we should be now. People are hungry to see change as they promised. So if we were looking at it from that angle, I'm not too sure that change has really been, has reflected so far in the 2 years of governance. Now, talking about the right time to assess the government, they have a 4-year mandate and have stayed 2 years. Halfway through is enough time to begin to see direction. If at 2 years you don't still have a direction and you are going to the 3rd year, then to the 4th year, something is wrong. The way Nigerian politics is structured is that they come into office, they acclimatize within the 1st year, you begin to see glimmer of results in the 2nd year, 3rd year, politics begins, 4th year, the main politics starts. To, you know, politics of taking over or continuing. You know, so it's reasonably good to begin to look at what is there in me, for me in this administration by 2 years. And I'm beginning to look at it from the perspective of the man in the street. What is the cost of living now? Has it improved? Where we were before, when they came in with the change mantra, it was Jonathan, you know, they felt Jonathan wasn't doing it right. So many things were wrong. You know, cost of living, people were not getting the real deal of governance from Jonathan. There was corruption in the land, so they thought he didn't do it right. And they came in to say, we need change, change, change. That was the mantra. You know, so that change is what people capitalized on. So people are in a hurry to see concrete change in their life, you know.
How would you rate the administration so far?
From the perspective of the masses, they haven't done well. But when you listen to them, they believe they have done well because, I mean, if you talk about security, they said they have decimated Boko Haram.
Technically?
They have technically defeated them, even though there's a lot of question in it. If you have technically defeated them, and there are still violence, you know, bombings here and there, killings here and there, can you really call that defeat? That's the question that they have not answered. You know, corruption, yes, they have been fighting corruption, but there's also the issue that are they really fighting corruption, or they are fighting corrupt people, or they are fighting the enemies of government? You know, some sectors think that there's something wrong. Yes, there's corruption in the land. I mean, everybody is worried about the extent we have gone in looting the treasury and doing it with impunity. But where do we start in the fight? That question has not been properly answered by the change administration of government. So I can't say they have done well so far.
Okay, let me come back to you, Mr. Chima. You're a public affairs analyst. Comparing this administration with that of Jonathan's, how would you rate it? Which one outweighs the other?
In what context?
In socioeconomic development, in the betterment of lives of the people.
Yes, the truth is that you can't even compare the two administrations. Under Jonathan, we witnessed you know, a kind of a monumental corruption, the type, you know, that that the nation has never recorded in the history of this
Do you
nation.
have facts to back up this?
Of course, there are so many of them. The current issue about Diezani, Madweke, that is still an issue that is in public domain. I mean, it's a typical case. You also have the issue of Dasuki, Colonel Dasuki, that is still in detention. You know, so to watch a group of government or elected officials, you know, so pretend over the disbursement of our commonwealth in such a manner is satanic. You know, it's satanic in the sense that, you know, you cannot sit down as a president and you feign ignorance of not knowing those you are, what those you appointed are doing. So to me, there is no nexus between the, you can't, there's no connection whatsoever, no nexus.
So you're saying...
So what I'm saying in essence is that the level of corruption witnessed under the previous administration of President Goodluck Jonathan is monumental, is unprecedented in the history of this nation. Now, when you want to also talk about the issue of, you know, government taking decisive steps on solving, you know, common national issues, we didn't experience that under the previous administration. Under his watch, so many things went wrong. You know, I don't want to call his administration a weak one, but we all have our various styles of leadership. But he did not frame it up when it comes to holding those he has appointed accountable, you know. And coming to feign ignorance after he has left office of not knowing what some of his officials did, to me, that doesn't show he was in charge, you know. So there is no comparison whatsoever. However, President Muhammad Buhari has demonstrated a good sense of, you know, leadership. I am not saying the APC-led administration is perfect, but there is a quick departure between the presidency of Goodluck Jonathan and that of President Muhammad Buhari, and it's very clear. We are seeing it. That is not to endorse some of the things that we have seen in the current administration. You know, the issue of the fight between the executive and legislature, you know, the disharmony, the discordant tones we have witnessed over time. So when you weigh the uncooperative attitude of both the legislature and the executive, is still an issue that needs to be, you know, addressed, especially by the executive, since they're in charge of the government. When you go
over, when you go on social media and on the streets, you hear people saying, bring back our corruption, you know, because life to them or for them was better then than now. Now, you're saying that Buhari's administration is far better than what we had, but the lives of the people on the streets are not affected.
Now, one thing you have to understand over time is that the problem we have witnessed as a nation over time has been a systematic one. The challenges that has, and it borders on, you know, bad leaders. You know, because if you don't have a good vision as a leader, what are you going to tell your subjects to do? Now, when you look at what has happened to us over time, it's not as if we've not, you know, accumulated resources as a nation, as a country. But it's just that we have had leaders that didn't manage the resources well. That is why we found ourselves where we are. Now, if you want to, you know, look at the current administration, it doesn't still mean that corruption has, you know, eloped the system. It's still an ongoing thing, but not at the rate people were doing it in the previous administration. Now, when you also look at the issues that borders on, you know, the relationship between the executive and the judiciary, where you still have corruption, you still have court orders not being obeyed even by the executive, it's not healthy. You know, if you want to look at it from the principle of separation of powers, each, you know, organ of government should respect one another. So, but when the executive doesn't obey court decisions, that means there's a problem. And that is why you have people like Dasuki and Zaki still in detention, irrespective of court pronouncements. So these are some of the issues. So the president needs to do more if we must depart from where we are. In some critical sectors, yes, some improvement, but we still have to go back to the drawing board and see how we can, you know, really provide the change APC government promised Nigerians. Okay, the APC government campaigned on a number of promises, all of which could be classified under three key areas. Number one is security, tackling corruption, and
economy.
Economic rejigging. What do you make of all of these? How have they fared? You know, just like the editor said, Boko Haram is still making sway in the northeast, but they say they have decimated them technically. How would you rate this administration based on these three areas of their campaign promises? Well, on the aspect of security, it's very clear. As at the time the current administration came into place, Boko Haram had taken over 3 local governments and hoisted their flag. Now, it took the current president ordering that the defense headquarters be relocated to Maiduguri for us to begin to experience some change. Now, you need to also understand the technicality involved in this kind of warfare. You see, the kind of war being engaged by Nigerian forces and Boko Haram is not a conventional war. You know, you have to also view it from that angle. Because if it is just conventional war, no problem. We have not experienced a situation where somebody fixes explosives on himself and walk into a crowd and blows him or herself up, you know. So you see people, you know, introducing that kind of, it's even difficult to screen and know who is who before something happens. And that is why you can even see Boko Haram with all not minding the level of decimation. You can still see them, they still infiltrate the citizens and come as close as Maiduguri to strike and retreat. Now, if you want to look at it from that perspective, you can give the current administration a pass mark. They have done well. One, funds meant for weapons to fight Boko Haram is being used for that purpose. Recently, we also saw Nigeria buying weapons from the US, you know, which US didn't consent to. Don't you think it was a theory of conspiracy between the then president of the United States, to... You can't view it from that angle, because don't forget that US have missions abroad. They know what is happening in Nigeria here more than even Nigerians. So when those funds were being appropriated and those funds were being disbursed by government public officials, they knew, and they saw the hypocrisy by government in the fight, you know. So you have to look at it from, it's just all about the kind of leadership available. When you look at it from economic perspective, well, we have not fared well, no doubt. But don't forget, when there is a regime change or change of administration in any country, basically portfolio investors are usually very careful. If you watch what happened in the economy shortly before the election, most portfolio investors withdrew their funds and left the country. Right. Because it's characterized by what? Uncertainty. It's basic. Now, immediately that happened, we saw in the first quarter of 2015, you know, the GDP stood at 6.2%. But the same first quarter of 2016, after the election, it dropped all-time low to 2.8. Now you ask what is responsible, a whole lot of factors. Now don't forget that at the same time, there was a change of administration, you know. We also experienced a scenario where there was massive attack in oil facilities in Niger Delta. I will have to put you on hold here, Mr. Chima. All right. Editor Baranta, do you think there is a conspiracy? Before I get to that, some people are of the opinion that Buhari and his cabinet members were not ready for administration. It took them almost 6 months to appoint ministers.
those he called noisemakers at a point, do you think they were not ready to handle the affairs of this country? Which is why we are having some of the things we are having today.
I would rather put it this way. What I have noted over the past 2 years is that APC as a party and then President Muhammadu Buhari as a president do not have the same agenda.
Why is that?
What I mean is that APC seemed to have an agenda that was well cut out, they want to pursue. But Muhammadu Buhari as president had few things he had in mind to accomplish prior to coming to office. So whether those are meeting are not quite his. I mean, it's not showing very clearly, because it appears to me that, you know, the time it took him to appoint the minister and the people he has surrounded himself with in terms of, you know, the right persons in the right places do not seem to connect with what the generality of people desire as a government, you know, in office. First, we are noticing, first of all, that he took that long to come to, I mean, bring people to office. Talking about his cabinet ministers, and when they eventually came, they were the same old people. You know, we all were thinking perhaps he's doing some really basic underground work to discover few persons he's going to bring into office that's going to really help turn things around. But 6 months later, when the names were announced, behold, they were the same old people. So it appears something was going on that was beyond our thinking. Then, talking about whether he is his government appears to me to have chosen, cut out his path, taking instructions from somebody somewhere else that we don't know, which translates in the kind of people he's been putting in office. There's a lot of nepotism going on.
So are you suspecting that there is a sort of cabal or inner caucus which is affecting the decisions of the president?
Let's go back to history. Before the president came to office, President Buhari came to office, there has been the government of Olusegun Obasanjo, ran for 8 years, handed over to Yaradua. When Yaradua came, he didn't stay. Because of illness, he died. Then Jonathan came, ran for 6 years. You know, within those periods, some things that were happening in government were not, some persons were not comfortable with it. And it appeared that there was that eagerness to come and turn things around again, you know, and that eagerness, that, you know, build-up was the government of Buhari appeared to be, had the arrowhead, you know. So when they came, they were in a hurry to turn things around. So they began, you know, it was an unprecedented, nepotic way of handling things that, you know, in the whole of armed forces, you know, all the heads of armed forces came from one side of the country.
So that's what I'm asking. Are you supposing that somebody or some people somewhere are scheming and directing the president? A lot of people have accused people you call the cabal. Some say they are...
I do not want to call anyone, I mean, it's not about cabal, it's about what the psyche of the president himself and where he's coming from.
So if he took about 6 months to appoint his ministers, why didn't he get, you know, the right people?
That is the fact. The fact of the matter is that he had something worked out in his head that he needed to come in a hurry to execute, which we all didn't know about. And that gave rise to disappointment. And please, there is one point I want to interrogate. My brother made that point. Before the Buhari came to office, there was an election, you know, that held across the land, including the north, including the places where the Boko Haram people were said to have I mean, they're occupying. Yeah. They held sway. They hung their flags. Yeah. Elections held in those places. I want to understand how that election happened.
That is not what we will be.
No, because people have been saying that, you know, before Buhari came, Boko Haram was occupying some local governments and hosting their flags. I'm asking, was there, I mean, did they help government hold elections in those places, or were they on ground when these elections happened, that they hosted their flags and the elections held in that place and there was no bloodshed, and they came out and the government of APC had the highest votes in those places? What I'm saying in effect is that some information are not correct. They need to be interrogated. Before that election happened, the government of, I'm not holding brief for Jonathan really, but I want the facts to come out. There was a postponement that happened, and that postponement was because the government of Jonathan said that they were not ready because of security issues, and they needed more time to secure some places before election could hold. Even though APC was not comfortable with that, but it happened. And then election held in all parts of the nation, across the land, in the north, in the east, in the south, in the west. And results came. In fact, the APC had the greatest number of results from those places. So how did it happen that elections held in those places, even while Boko Haram was still holding sway? That is the question that we need, because just as my brother said it here now, Lai Mohammed, the government spokesperson, have always retracted on this fact. So we need to understand how it happened. You know, now the government were in place, like I said before, seemed to me to have an agenda that is different from what we are expecting, which is why things are not adding up.
We'll continue on that discourse when we come back from that short break. If you're just joining us, this is Christians in Politics, which is coming to you from the broadcast studios of the Anglican Cable Network Nigeria, broadcasting from Abuja, the nation's capital. Join us again.
On the program this week, our Bible reading is taken from John chapter 15 verse 5, which says, I am the vine, ye are the branches. Whoever abideth in me and I in him, the same.
Many thanks for joining us, everyone. We've been discussing the 2 years of Buhari's administration and the journey so far. And I have in the studio two gentlemen who are doing justice to the program. They are Mr. Chimachu, who is a public affairs analyst and the CEO of Belani Global Resource Limited, located here in Abuja. I also have Mr. Peter Baranta, who is the editor of New Christian Herald magazine, also located here in Abuja. And we've been talking about the way forward after 2 years of Buhari's administration, or in 2 years of Buhari's administration. Before we went to a break, you spoke extensively about security issues as it concerns Boko Haram and its decimation. But we want to move further, Mr. Baranta. Just recently, the president just came back from medical tourism, and a lot of people have been talking, saying a lot of things about the speech he gave to Nigerians. Some people have pointed out errors and places they feel the president didn't do so well. How would you address that issue of the presidential speech?
The presidential speech did not help us. We thought that within the periods 103 days that the president was away on medical tourism in London, that a whole lot of reflection would have gone on, and with all the feelers was getting, he said was following trends, that his attitude and approach to governance will receive a little touch in the area of being sober, being reflective, being more friendly, being more approachable, and willing to talk with all segments of Nigeria. And we were expecting that to reflect in the very speech that he was going to make as he came back. But we didn't see that. What we heard that day was the speech of somebody who was ready for war. Well, he was very combative in his speech, and we thought that didn't do us good at all. We are looking for ways to calm frayed nerves in the country. So many persons are not happy with few things going on.
Let me get your view, Mr. Chimachu. How did you see that? Did you receive the message, the speech? It was about 5 minutes plus?
Yes, the presidential speech was, I see it from two perspectives. On one part, it addressed some basic issues, but it didn't, on the other way, it didn't address core, the pensive or the tensed atmosphere he met on ground. Agitation is normal as far as human beings are involved in society. But again, when it has to do with the issue of call for restructuring, the issue of devolution of power, the issue of state police and all hosts of other issues that different people were conversing for, I see it as, I didn't see the speech, as suiting as it ought to be. But then you should also understand that he swore as the president and commander-in-chief to uphold the Constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria. He is bound to hold the unity of the nation, irrespective of whatever agitation or distant feelings people have. So it's a mixed reaction, for me. On one part, yes, he addressed some issue. On the other part, maybe he needed to have appealed for calm, as it were, or as it is at the moment, because the tension is still there, So I see it from two perspectives.
Okay, Vice President Yemi Oshibanjo is a pastor and a Christian, yes, and he's the vice president. Some people are saying that this man does not represent the interest of Christian community in this country. Do you believe such allegation?
He doesn't have to represent the interest of Christian communities in the country. He is a vice president of Nigeria. He should represent the interest of everyone, Christian, Muslim, whatever of whichever block you belong. He should represent the interest of all. But what we are worried about was that it appeared too that he wasn't completely in charge. Within the period he acted as president, he was not too free to take decisions. You know, we heard they confirmed, I mean those in government confirmed, some persons going to London with files, the president chasing them back. Even to think about bypassing him to go to London to take files for the president to sign showed something not quite right in governance, showing that he wasn't in charge. You know, but be that as it may, we also know where he's coming from. He's not a politician. He's a pastor, like he said, but now a pastor in politics. So he's actually like beginning to learn the ropes, you know, so he needed to be careful. He needed to tread softly, you know, and he's an intelligent man, and I think he is learning. So I wasn't expecting too much from him, given the environment around which he was operating and where he was coming from.
One of the problems that bedevil this country is the issue of corruption. You know, Nigeria has been rated over and over again as one of the leading countries in corruption, in maladministration, in mismanagement of funds. What do you think is the origin of this corruption? Some people say because Nigerians do not get their own part of the social contract. There is no basic amenity, or there are no basic amenities, there are no jobs, there are no security apparatus set in place to protect the lives and properties of Nigerians. And people feel that when they have the chance to be in positions of authority, it is their time to take a part of the national cake. Do you agree with these people?
Yes, first and foremost, I'll be very honest to tell you that you know, a lot needs to be done when it has to do with government providing, you know, basic amenities or socio-economic amenities needed in the country. Because a situation whereby, you know, I fuel my car, I fuel the generator in my house to power my house, I repair the road that leads to my village from my personal purse, you know, and there is little or no government intervention one way or the other. Naturally, as a citizen, you have your rights and your responsibilities. Likewise, the state to the citizens. Now, where you have a situation whereby the responsibility that is supposed to be, or the role that is supposed to be played by government is not there. Now, people begin to develop a sense of, you know, egalitarianism. You understand? Now, the question is, why do I need government? Why do I have to pay my taxes? And that is why you see FIRS chasing people around and they are not willing. They are ready to do anything to undermine the system because they feel government is not doing enough in providing, you know, socio-economic amenities, you know, required for that is supposed to be the engine growth, you know, even for the economy. Now, when you look at it, when you look at corruption, I said it earlier that the kind of leaders any nation has or gets is a reflection of that society. If you have corrupt leaders, it means we have corrupt followers or citizens. You understand? If it is not corruption, why would somebody come and give you resources for you to sell your vote?
Don't you think it's as a result of the way Nigerian governments in the past have handled the citizens?
It goes beyond that. Corruption, if you are not corrupt, if you stop corrupt, if you don't have corrupt tendencies, if you are even corrupt as a person, you lack the moral, you know, right to demand accountability or transparency from government. So it starts from us, it starts from self. You know, I always say it's corruption. When people talk about corruption, the first thing that comes to people's mind is those in position of authority. How about our day-to-day lives?
Let me ask this question. Let me ask you: are you corrupt?
for me as a person, I won't consider myself a corrupt person.
Why?
But if I see a way to help me achieve my objective, that I feel that within my conscience, that is not, you know, in any way interfering in my relationship with God, of course I will look for a way to assist myself. But that doesn't mean I have to give somebody resources. I've had instances where I walk into office, I screamed and shouted, you know, to get things done, because I refuse to
play ball.
You know, it's happened over. I'm an activist by nature. If I want to get something anywhere in a government office, I put Savicom for you. You do your job. You know, there was a play there. I went to Nigerian Population Commission. Similar thing happened. I raised my voice. The overall director came down. I said, I've been coming here for 3 weeks just to get NPC birth certificate for my son. You know, so when you see certain things, you know, to process visa. Now, when you see certain things, you know, happening, it depends on your willingness to consent. You either conform or you stand your ground. Now, if you refuse to give bribe, there won't be a taker. It's a mindset.
Now, that takes me to this aspect. We are all Christians, and about 45 to 50% of Nigerians are Christians who go to church every Sunday, sit on the pews, listen to the preachers. And if you look around your vicinity, you will see a whole lot of church buildings being erected every day. Does it mean these people who go to church do not get the right words from the churches? Or is it as a result of the failure of these preachers to imbibe into the congregants the culture of being prudent and being accountable? What do you make of it? You are the editor of the New Christian Herald.
The church, as it is today, appears to have been infiltrated but very badly. The infiltration I mean is that there's so much of materialism ruling the church, and that is reflective of the attitude of the people who come to church. The church is a place where it's a meeting ground for decency, you know, for decent behavior, for righteousness. That's where the church should be. That is the role of the church, to clean the conscience of the nation. You know, if you are misbehaving outside, when you come to the church cleans you up and make you behave well and throws you back to the society. That's the role of the church. But when the church is paying more attention now to materialism, to how to erect structures, how to look good, how to make money out of the people, and leave the core mandate of the church, then what you get is what you are seeing in the society. You know, so people now come to church not for salvation, but a place to make contact, business contacts, and you know, there are those who come to church who are rich men. Help them get this, help them get that, you know, and that is why we are not getting it right. If those who are in church are losing focus and not directing the people aright onto the path of truth and righteousness, then we have lost it completely. That is what he's talking about. That's why I agree with him. You know, that we really need to understand the role of we citizens in checkmating what the government or the people in politics are doing. You know, if we say no from our own little circle, they won't be able to carry on.
Does it mean that the effect of leadership is not being felt among the people, both in the secular world and in the church? Because if the leaders are right, leaders are people who are meant to give directions, you know, to give instructions on how things should be done well. So if these people who are supposedly the good people are not given the right directions, don't you think that's the resultant effect that we are seeing in the people?
Leadership, effect of leadership is, we are supposed to get it in context. Leadership in church and leadership in the society, you know, there is a bit of difference. The church leadership comes with focus on cleaning the man, you know, and before you clean, you are clean already yourself. You know, if the society is doing it wrong, the church should give the direction. That's the leadership that should come from the church. You know, if we're not giving that direction of a sound leadership, clean, righteous leadership coming from the church, then the society is doomed.
Do you think the church is filling this responsibility?
No, not fully.
They are failing?
To a very large extent, yes. Why I'm saying this is that now we are having the issues of corruption in the land. And majority of the people we know as corrupt people are members of the church. They bring the proceeds of corruption to the church and nobody interrogates it.
Do you have any facts to back up this claim, sir?
We have the politicians and all the people that come, I mean, from politics are members. We know them now. Why I'm saying this, look at, in the book of Acts of the Apostles, when Ananias and Sapphira went and sold their land, their own land, their own, and they sold it and brought half of the money to the church. It was theirs, you know, but Peter, who had the Holy Spirit, saw what saw the lie in their behavior and took action, and you know, rejected what they brought to the church. You know, but if Ananias and Sapphira was here in our time, they'll have been celebrated. They'll be given front row. Nobody will, I mean, we are so immersed in getting people to bring that we are not willing to look at where it's coming from. We're not interrogating what people are bringing into the church. Enough. If we're interrogating it, people will seize. Do you, I mean, something happened in Ozobolo some time ago, few weeks ago, in Ozobolo, Anambra State.
Yes.
We are told that one person built a church, you know, and you know the story that happened. There was an attack in the church. A gang, they say they are from South Africa, you know. Now, what has happened to that matter? It has died down. It
has not died down. I think the police is investigating the matter as it says.
Let me tell you what will happen. Without any prejudice, those who are involved in that matter are sorting everyone out, and at the end of the day, nothing will come out of that matter because they have the mega box to buy their way around, and that's what is going on in the church.
So are you trying to say that the church is compromised, its leadership is compromised?
To a great extent, and we're praying that if we tell ourselves the truth, the destiny of Nigeria actually is in the church. Now, the man on the side of leadership now, our president, Buhari, is actually a good omen for the church. You know why? His leadership is one that should call the church to order. You know, in this history of the Bible, when the people have done terribly bad, God will allow somebody with a fang to come into leadership. If you check the book of Habakkuk, there was a time in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 5 and 6, God allowed the Babylonian army to invade the land of Judah, to call them to order. You know, and that's actually what's going on now.
We'll come back to you. Mr. Chimachu, do you think the church leaders have failed in their responsibility to bring the people closer to God, you know, to reflect the life of Christ in their society?
Well, the truth is that, you know, Karl Marx said that religion is the opium of the people. And you know that also that Nigerians are very religious people, irrespective of whether the person is a Christian, Muslim, you know, a traditionalist, you know, or atheist, as the case may be. But again, irrespective of our religious nature, we are still endemically corrupt.
And why is that?
And we are still evil towards one another. We don't love even our neighbors, you know. And I see religion as opium or drugs. Use it to sedate, you know. You notice that these days people don't go to church because they love God. You know, just like what my brother said, people go to church because they hear there's this big church in town where, you know, the big boys in town worship. You know, where the senators, the ministers go to. They also try to identify with that church because they want to, you know, mingle, get connected. You see maybe people rushing to a particular parish. Maybe if it's the Orthodox, Anglican Catholic Church, you know. So we have all missed it. And the responsibility is actually on the leaders of the church to go back to the drawing board. The emphasis on materialism has even made it worse, because due to, like what he said, you know, projects being carried out by church, people bring in monies, and these monies are not even being questioned. The sources are not being questioned. So it's a challenge. Now, you see, I strongly believe that Nigerian religious leaders must do something drastic, you know, to change the tide, because religion is not guaranteeing the elimination of corruption. It is not reducing poverty. It is not creating wealth, you know. It's just probably in few churches where you even see people have empowerment programs where they empower their members genuinely, and you see the wealthy ones contributing to help the poor ones. But of a truth, a lot needs to be done. The pastors, the imams, the traditionalists, the alphas, and the rest of them must go back to the drawing board and start talking to their members on the need. If they want their members to really follow the way of God, the way of Jesus Christ, the way of Allah, you know, let they practice what is in the Bible, in the Quran, and, you know, and other holy books. But of a truth, you know, is a very wide departure from what it should be. You know, people are recognized in churches on the basis of your, you know, what you can do, what you can contribute, what you can give. People are giving elders, I'm giving pastoral role, you know, because of all those, you know, pecuniary considerations. So it's a challenge on its own.
We'll go on a short break now, and when we return, we'll talk more about how to salvage the situation we found ourselves in, in the church and in the society. If you're just joining us, this is Christians in Politics, coming to you from the ACNN, broadcasting from Abuja, Nigeria. Don't go away.
Anglican Cable Network Nigeria, ACNN, is your most reliable gospel TV station that brings to you quality TV programming which build your spiritual life and enhance your walk with God through the undiluted Word of God. Join us on our social media platforms anytime you miss your favorite program. Subscribe to our YouTube channel with the address www.youtube.com/ACNNTV and click that video that matters to you.
Protect your vote is a euphemistic way of saying do everything to make sure you can share blood, you can kill, to ensure that the person you voted for is the one that emerged as winner at the end of the day.
There is never a dull moment on our Facebook page, as we are dedicated to keep you informed with the up-to-date news about the church and other information. Just log on to www.facebook.com/ACNNTV, for you can now watch some of our programs live on your mobile device. Follow us on Twitter with the handle @ACNNTV.com, and you'll be glad you did. So now, there is no longer regret each time you miss any episode of your favorite programs, as you can now watch them on the go, anytime, anywhere. ACNN. We are indeed reaching the world with the undiluted Word of God.
Thank you for sticking around, everyone. We have been discussing Buhari's administration and the journey so far, and I have been discussing with Mr. Peter Baranta, who is the editor of the New Christian Herald magazine here in Abuja, and Mr. Chima Achu, who is a public affairs analyst and the CEO of Belani Global Resource Limited, located here in Abuja too. And before we went to break, you said that the Christian leaders are to blame for what we experience among the people who also form the leadership of the country in one way or the other. Now, before we go, finally, what should be done to nip this menace in the bud?
The scripture says in 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14, if my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and forsake their evil ways, then I shall hear from heaven, I shall forgive their sins and heal the land. When I said the PNB administration is a good omen for us, is actually what I'm talking about. God is drawing our attention back to himself by bringing somebody who chastises or call us back to order. And what that means is that if the church can come together, irrespective of denominations and doctrines, break down the walls of denomination for the sake of the unity of the country, and ask God for forgiveness, and ask to reconcile with him, and refocus our attention away from materialism, away from money, away from self-glorification, onto the core mandate of the church of repentance, forgiveness of sins, and healing of the land. God will do something. God will help us. The reason why it is so bad for us is because the church is fragmented. We are not united at all, and that this fragmentation is fueling the problems we're having around.
Okay, on the issue of the nation, what should be done?
The nation, the church should take the leadership.
What advice do you have for the present government?
They should do what they have to do. I mean, they're fighting corruption. That's good. That's good. I like it. But my worry is that there has to be focus on, digging it from the foundation, looking at people and hurling them to detention and calling them names, even without proper. The Zani case has been on and on and on and on and on and on, and nobody's taking her to court. It appears there's more interest in framing her and demonizing her than making a case out of her. So let us not be looking at people. Let us look at the things that aid corruption and dig them out and root them out. And then when you are doing that and there are corrupt people on the way, of course you deal with them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baranta. Mr. Chima, your final words. What should the church do in such a critical time as this?
Well, the church must go back to the drawing board. The too much emphasis on materialism, greed, avarice, all that has made it, impossible for the church to actualize, their core mandate, just like what my colleague said. But again, beyond that, it's not as even maybe some of the preachers or imams don't preach to their members. It's just the willingness of members to hearken to what was preached to them or what has been preached to them. Because it's one thing to hear, it's another thing to do. So there must be a kind of, attitudinal, change, attitudinal reorientation, in approach to issues like corruption, to emphasis on money, emphasis on, materialism in the society at large.
In one sentence, what advice do you have for the government of the APC?
Well, the government needs to do more. Competent people should be appointed to hold sensitive positions on one part. Then also the economy needs to be rejigged as it stands, because a situation whereby the CBN pumps money to regulate the exchange rate, is a cosmetic approach to solving that kind of issue, and that is why you see the fluctuations.
And this is how it has been on the program Christians in Politics. We discuss the issue of Buhari's administration and the journey so far. I was speaking with Mr. Chima Achu, who is a public affairs analyst and the CEO of Belani Global Resource Limited here in Abuja, and Mr. Peter Baranta, the editor of New Christian Herald magazine, also here in Abuja. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for gracing the program.
You're welcome.
It is on this note that we come to the conclusion of this program. Many believe that there is a big question mark on how far the Buhari administration has managed the economy since he assumed office, as the value of the naira has witnessed a free fall among other negative economic indices. Arguably, the consensus by the majority of Nigerians is that under him, the nation's economy has gone from bad to worse in virtually all sectors. People in this school of thought insist that the life of the ordinary Nigerian has not improved, but has indeed gone down comparatively to what it used to be before May 29, 2015. But in all, 2 years is just a half time of 4 years which Nigerians voted the APC, and we hope by the remaining 2 years we will see a dramatic and drastic change in the affairs of the country. Thank you so very much for watching. I am Chukwu Mekalum Ayakwa. See you again.